Hi, this is Dave Billington, Director of the DRI Center for Dream Studies and co-host of the Dreamboat podcast. It was recently World Lucid Dreaming Day, so we thought we would reshare our interview with lucid dreaming expert Robert Waggoner. It was our first episode and remains one of the most popular we've ever done. You'll hear why when you hear Robert talk about his lucid dreaming experiences going back to childhood, his tips for developing and maintaining lucidity, and what he has learned about consciousness and the nature of reality. Whether this is the first time you've heard it or whether this is a recurring dreamboat for you, I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Dreamboat podcast, a place where we talk about everything dreamy. All you wanted to know about dreams and where you might find some answers. My name is Dave Billington, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm also director of the Dream Research Institute. And I'm joined by fellow psychotherapist Laura Payne.
Hello, I'm Laura Payne, and I'm also part of the Dream Research Institute. And we're called the Dreamboat because we are actually recording our podcast on a beautiful canal barge here at Little Venice in London called the Boat Pod.
We'll be looking at dreams, talking to guest experts, and answering your questions.
Now, let's get on with the episode.
Imagine you find yourself in a familiar place. Maybe it's a room in your home, or maybe it's somewhere else you know well. You feel a little strange. The light seems peculiar. You look at the clock, but the numbers seem to be floating strangely. And now that you realize it, the pictures on the wall seem strange. Why is the sky that purple color? And is that a flying submarine? Suddenly, you realize that you are dreaming. Quite often, that very thought will be enough to wake you up. But what if you didn't? What if you could keep that awareness, but stay in the dream? What would you do? Fly? Travel? Go pay a visit to that sexy someone around the way? Or maybe sit down to practice the violin?
These are all things people do when they enter the so-called rare dream state of lucid dreaming. And for many of us, I suppose our first introduction to its concepts came thanks to the Christopher Nolan film Inception. However, it's not that rare to lucid dream for some people. For example, our guest today, Robert Waggoner, has had over 1,000 lucid dreams since he was a child. Robert has written a couple of books on lucid dreaming, and as well you can find him on his website, which is Lucid Advice, luciddreamingadvice.com. He has shared what he has learned from his lucid dreams, from tips on becoming lucid in a dream to answers to some of his questions about the nature of consciousness, which is something that both Dave and I are really fascinated in. And it turns out there's more to lucid dreaming than manipulating dream reality, more than wish fulfillment, and certainly more than making yourself more productive.
Robert is a former president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams, the IASD, and he is co-editor of the magazine Lucid Dreaming Experience. Robert, welcome to the Dreamboat. How did you sleep last night?
Not as well as you'd hope because I have a cold, but I'm doing okay.
So I suppose the first question everyone's going to ask you, Robert, is how did you find you could lucid dream? How did you find you could do it?
So if you can imagine this, in 1975, I was in high school and I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan, where his shamanic teacher, Don Juan, suggests that he become aware, he finds his hands in the dream state and realize he's dreaming. And so there really wasn't a technique. So I just developed my own technique. And within 3 nights, I had my first lucid dream.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more. Obviously, everyone's going to want to know what techniques you use, and your books obviously cover this in more detail. Just tell us a little bit more of how you develop the hand technique.
Right. So I knew about the power of suggestion. So every night before I'd go to sleep, I would look at my hands while telling myself, tonight my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And I would say that for about 5 minutes and then fall asleep. So I did this each night. When I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I'd ask myself, did I see my hands? And on the third night, I'm walking through my high school hallway, and suddenly my hands pop right in front of my face. And I go, oh, my hands, this is a dream. And it felt so amazing to realize that these young guys over there, they were actually dream figures. And I reached over and touched the wall, and it was cool and nubby, just like it should be. But I knew it was still a dream creation. I went out to the administration hallway. I started looking at the details of the brick, and all of a sudden the dream got shaky. And I remembered that Don Juan had told Carlos that if the dream ever gets shaky, look back at your hands to renew the power of dreaming. I did that and kept the lucid dream going on. It was truly phenomenal.
Well, I must admit, I have tried your technique, having read your book, and I did lucid dream that night, having had a spell of not lucid dreaming for a while, and was very impressed with it, and found the classic thing, I started flying and all the things you enjoy when you're lucid dreaming. But for you, I mean, you've taken it on a lot further, haven't you?
Right. So you have to realize that was back in 1975. So I've had a number of years to get better and better at lucid dreaming. Probably the thing that helped me the most was seeing the scientific evidence come out in 1980 and 81. Because up until that time, I was just doing this all by myself. I could barely talk to anyone about it because they told me I was just having a dream about dreaming. And I said, no, I'm becoming aware within the dream. So I was super happy when the scientific evidence emerged in around 1980, 81.
When you talk about scientific research, which research are you thinking of?
There's the initial research by Keith Hearn at the University of Hull in England, and also the work of Stephen LaBerge at Stanford. But they both had the same idea. Keith Hearn had it first, that you could bring a lucid dreamer into the sleep lab, put rapid eye movement polygraph pads on his eyes or her eyes, and tell them, when you become lucidly aware, move your eyes left to right 8 times, and that'll create a signal that will make me realize that, oh, you're consciously aware within the dream. And they had other measures that made sure the person was asleep. And it was April 12th of 1975. Alan Worsley at the University of Hull was the first person to signal that he was consciously aware within a lucid dream. What's interesting is that same spring of 1975 was when I had my very first lucid dream. And so it's kind of interesting to realize that these were concurrent.
And you're obviously a very experienced lucid dreamer now. Do you still have to use techniques to become lucid in a dream, or is it something more spontaneous for you now?
What's interesting now is that I have more lucid thinking in regular dreams. So I'll be having a regular dream, and then I'll remember the principles of lucid dreaming. For example, that if you expect a dream figure to act in a certain way, then in the dream, it'll act a certain way. So I'll be in a regular dream and I'll see a dream figure and I'll think, oh, if I expect him to act like this, he's going to act like that. And he does, of course. And so it's interesting that now so many of my dreams have this lucid quality, even though technically I haven't jumped up and down and said, hey, this is a dream, I'm dreaming this. So it definitely changes. But it does. If I want to have a full-on lucid dream, it helps me even to use techniques to encourage that.
And you've been teaching and talking about lucid dreaming for quite a long time now. And it seems like everybody wants to know, can I learn how to do this? Is it something that anyone can learn with those techniques, or are some people more able to do it?
They've done studies, and it seems like more than half of the population has already had a lucid dream. So they've at least had one. And about 25% of the population reports having at least one lucid dream a month. I think most everyone can learn how to lucid dream. I remember in one workshop, I was interacting with a woman who was a Buddhist meditator in Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche's group. And she had never had a lucid dream. And so she took my course in order to have a lucid dream. And she had 3 lucid dreams within 1 week. But a lot of times it takes a special kind of focus. and a special kind of intent. And she had both of that and achieved it. I think most anyone can. It just might take a bit of effort, that's for sure.
I think one thing we should perhaps do is ask you to explain what a lucid dream is and what you think it is. Here we are talking away. We all know what you're talking about, but I'm suddenly thinking a lot of people are fascinated by it, but they still don't really know what's actually happening and what it is.
Right. So a lucid dream is any dream in which you realize within the dream, hey, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this. So you consciously know this is a dream. And normally when you know this is a dream, then you can begin to direct yourself within the dream space. If you want to go left, you go left. If you want to go right, you go right. If you want to fly, you can fly. And so that would be just a basic lucid dream. Of course, there's much deeper aspects to lucid dreaming, but that would be a simple lucid dream.
So you mentioned about deeper aspects. I know that you've, like a lot of people, done the sort of flying, walking through walls, dare I say it, having sex with whoever you fancy in the dream, which seems to be one of the issues for lucid dreamers. I spoke to somebody recently and she said, why do I always wake up just as it's getting good? Which made me laugh. And I was thinking that you've probably got techniques that you can tell people of how to stay asleep. So when you... because that's often the way, isn't it, in the early days of lucid dreaming, you wake up too soon.
It's so exciting to find that you're in a lucid dream that you're all excited and wake up. Yeah,
that's probably the number one complaint that I hear from lucid dreamers, especially beginners, is that as soon as they become lucidly aware, within 10 or 20 seconds, they've managed to wake themselves up. And so what I always teach in my workshops, when you become lucidly aware, the first thing, you have to remain relatively calm. You can be happy for yourself that you become lucidly aware, but if you get too excited, you're going to pop out of the lucid dream. And so what you also find in a lucid dream, whatever mental command you give yourself will be immediately acted upon. So if you tell yourself to calm down, then normally that reduces the amount of emotional energy. Or if you open the door and there's Tom Cruise on the other side, you realize this has to be a dream because Tom Cruise does not come to my apartment building, and you become lucidly aware. I'd encourage you to stop looking at Tom Cruise and look at the floor or something like that while telling yourself to calm down. So remaining calm is probably the number one point. The second point, I think, is enhancing your awareness. You can actually, when you become lucid, get even more lucid and begin to stabilize that lucid dream environment. For example, you might want to rub your hands together in the lucid dream. And even though they're dream hands, you'll still have this sensation of two hands rubbing together. It just makes the space more real, more solid, more stable. And then probably the third thing for lucid dreamers, beginners, is that you have to maintain your focus. Because for the next, however many minutes as you go exploring, you have to remind yourself, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this. Because otherwise you'll get lost to the interesting events that are going on and just return to regular dreaming. But if you do those three things, reduce your emotions, enhance your awareness, maintain your focus, you can have a very long and satisfying lucid dream.
What do you think about Stephen LeBurge's spinning technique that he recommended?
Right. So one nice thing for me is I was concurrent with the growth of lucid dreaming. And I remember a friend of mine from California asked me if I'd ever spun in a lucid dream. This is in the early 80s. She asked me if I'd ever spun in a lucid dream. And so she told me, the next time you become lucid, I want you to start spinning. And I'll tell you, I began spinning in a lucid dream. And what happened? I just saw orbs of colored light start spinning along with me. I did not find what Stephen LeBurge found. But what Stephen LeBurge found was that when you have the sense that the lucid dream is going to fall apart, if you begin spinning, he thought that would activate your vestibular system and bring you back into a sense of balance. And from there, either a new lucid dream would begin or you'd be in a new lucid dream segment and could keep the lucid dream going. But I believe part of his idea is just one of if you expect to do something, that will continue the lucid dream. Then if you do it, the lucid dream continues. But yes, I've spun in a number of lucid dreams since then and kept the lucid dream going.
That's interesting. Do you think that's where Christopher Nolan got the idea of the spinning top totem in Inception, where they spin the top to verify whether they're still dreaming lucidly or not?
Yeah, I wonder, in his interviews, he said that he had a number of lucid dreams. And so that made me pleased that he actually knew what lucid dreaming was from the inside and all. But I do have to say that, as many lucid dreamers have pointed out, I've had lots of lucid dreams without gun battles and things like that. I would realize they're lucid dream bullets and probably not really be too worried. So in any case, he might have gotten the idea from that. Yeah.
Were there any other techniques that you've sort of picked up from other people? I was reading about LaBerge's mild technique, which is a mnemonic technique of some kind.
There's a number of techniques. There's probably, if you added them all up, there's probably 20 different techniques to become lucidly aware. One that I would ask people to think about is what early adopters of lucid dreaming used back in the early 1980s. And that was simply the power of suggestion. So what we lack in most of our regular dreams is a high level of critical awareness. So if we're walking down the street and here comes the queen, well, the queen's in our street right now, and we just go along. We'll make up a story to explain it to ourselves. So we lack any high degree of critical awareness. So one suggestion that I encourage people would be to tell themselves over and over before they go to sleep, tonight in my dreams, I'll be more critically aware. And when I notice something strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So tonight in my dreams, I'll be more critically aware. When I notice something strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So everyone can use the power of suggestion to help themselves become lucidly aware. But you're right, there's dozens of techniques out there that people can choose from. But I like the simple ones. I like the ones that have a psychological principle behind them. And the power of suggestion has been seen to work over and over.
Is there, when you look at the sort of some of the neuroscience around it, is there anything that you have found quite outstanding about it? Or is it just a capacity that lies dormant for all of us in the main?
There was a study by Martin Dressler at the Max Planck Institute and some others. What they did, they brought a lucid dreamer into a fMRI machine, magnetic resonance imagery machine. Mm-hmm. And so they put a bunch of headphones around the person so they wouldn't hear the rumble of the machine working the doll. But the person was able to signal that they were consciously aware within the lucid dream, within the dream, and become lucid. And then that's when they started up the fMRI to measure what the brain activity was like in that moment. And so it's a wonderful study that was published in Scientific Research. But what it showed was that the portions of the brain that we commonly attribute self-perception, evaluating our own thoughts and feelings, and that kind of self-assessment, those were the parts that were activated. And that's what you find in a lucid dream. Oh, this is a dream. Now I can fly away. Now I can ask that dream figure, who are you? What do you represent? Now I can do most anything that I can come up with in my mind. And so it was great to see that kind of confirmed, even though that's what lucid dreamers have been saying for thousands of years. It was nice to see the neurological data.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that neuroscience now can almost, well, I want to use the word, I don't know how you feel about this, Dave, prove that something like that is actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's quite well accepted now that it is happening. It's a recognized phenomenon. And it's really interesting as people go further with that, with different kinds of lucid dreaming experiences, which is something you've written about and talked about, Robert. Once you get beyond first being aware and then kind of playing in that dream world, that dream environment. But you've actually gone on to do a lot of inquiry into the nature of dreams and the nature of consciousness itself through your lucid dreams. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So For many of us, when we first become lucid, we just play around. Like Laura was saying, we have fun. We walk through walls. We might discover lucid dream sex and just have fun with the whole thing. But as you begin to play around, you also begin to learn the principles of lucid dreaming and how you're helping to create the experience that then you're part of. And so some of the principles of lucid dreaming that I discovered was that our beliefs and expectations get projected out there for us to then experience. So for example, one time I became lucidly aware in a theater. I decided to fly out of the theater and explore. And so I flew through the wall expecting to go through it easily because it's dream stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I went flying around this whole area. Then I decided to come back to the beginning. But as I was coming back to the beginning point, now I'm coming from the other side, and boy, those bricks look so solid and hard. And it was funny. Instead of flying through the wall, this time I got stuck halfway through. Wow. And at that moment, I realized it was just that temporary disbelief or that temporary negative expectation that this was going to be difficult that then I experienced in the lucid dream. So you begin to see how your beliefs and expectations get projected out there for you to experience. And so dreaming then becomes a little bit of a feedback loop. And so I think this is important for the world of dream interpretation as well. If you begin to get inside the mind of the dreamer, you realize that the dream wasn't a message sent by the gods necessarily, that the dream happens dynamically in that moment, according to how the dreamer is responding, what they believe, what they expect, what they focus upon, what they intend, and all that. And so that's when you begin to realize that there's more going on here than just playing around, that there's principles that this unconscious mind is engaged in.
What would you say about those principles? Because, I mean, we're talking about almost I was going to say not properly researched levels of consciousness here, aren't we?
Right. Well, you also see this in psychedelic experiences as well. I was surprised when my books came out. Various psychedelic people were writing to me, and I thought, I don't bring up psychedelics in my book. I'm not a person who has any experience with psychedelics. But what they saw in my book was that I was explaining how you could explore inner reality, but you also had to be cognizant or mindfully aware of your own beliefs and expectations, your own focus and intent. Because without understanding your part in the exploration, you'd never truly understand what you were engaging with. So I think just these basic principles of belief, expectation, focus, intent, that helps us get some sense of it. But then what I discovered in 1985 as part of a Lucid Explorers group was that you could use lucid dreaming to engage what I call your larger awareness. And you could do that by ignoring the dream figures and just asking a question of the dream, like, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. And then what was amazing is sometimes you would either hear a vocalized response, sometimes the entire lucid dream would change and you'd see a whole new created realm. It was truly fantastic to realize that you could engage one's larger awareness. Some people might call it your unconscious mind. I just call it the larger awareness.
It sounds very Jungian. I was thinking for Jungians, this would be the notion of the collective unconscious or unconsciousness. I was also, when I was reading that part in your book, I was fascinated by, it reminded me of, and I don't know if you know of it, the Many Lives, Many Masters book by Brian Weiss, who used hypnosis to work with his patients and started finding that there were other voices and almost spiritual characters, people behind his subjects that were talking back.
It's a little bit complicated, but the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is that when you begin to engage this larger awareness and ask it questions, you begin to see that its level of creativity is easily 100 times more than the ego waking Robert self. I remember one time asking to see my life as if it was a painting. And suddenly in the sky above me appears a painting that's 90 feet long by 30 feet high. And it's all fleshed out exactly. It's just phenomenal, the amount of creativity that you can see. But what's interesting is not only can you have experiences like that, you can also ask to experience concepts as well. And so, for example, I encourage people, if you become lucidly aware, don't try to go find Buddha or God or some heavy-duty spiritual figure, because normally you'll get too excited and wake up.
Okay.
But I said, what you can do instead is stop in the lucid dream, ignore the dream figures, and ask to experience the quality of the divine. So you could ask, hey, let me experience unconditional love, and then see what happens. And people who have done this told me that the resulting experience was so profound, they just couldn't believe what they experienced after making that request. And so that's when you begin to realize that this larger awareness, even though it's connected to you and part of you, has experience beyond the ego waking self.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, I know the ancients believed that dreams were messages from the gods. In many ways, you can see how this particular state could be attributed to something like that it is beyond ourselves.
Well, and I would say that's very true. It's you can see that lucid dreams and regular dreams might be a co-creation of the ego waking self and the larger awareness working together, but they're kind of playing off each other, and that's why how you respond in a regular dream oftentimes gets reflected. And I think that explains like recurring nightmares. If you have the same response every time to the nightmare situation, nothing's going to change. But if you become lucid and just change one thing, then the nightmares will basically cease. Or in a regular dream, if for the first time you decide to do something different, instead of run away or scream or whatever, you're going to face the monster, then the nightmare will basically cease. It's like our inner awareness is trying to educate us to try a new response, to go beyond the fight or flight. And by doing so, then we get rewarded by having the recurring nightmares cease. Anyway, it's quite beautiful to watch it happen.
Yeah. And it's quite a challenge to the ego, to the kind of waking self, that identity, to realize or accept that there's something, is it within, is it beyond, but there's something else there that knows more and has something to offer beyond what the ego thinks it knows.
I was wondering, Dave, I know at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute, that we offer lucid dreaming courses. How well do people get on with those? There is an advanced course. Do you go into these deep states?
Yeah, well, because it is about being able to practice that awareness, and starting off with how do you induce a lucid dream, and then continuing to work with it and work with the dreams that you do have, so that, again, using the waking dream process, which we've talked about before, so that you get used to this idea of interacting with the dream space and being able to interrogate the characters that are there.
How often on the courses do they go off, those that are sharing the group, do they go off and visit each other at night?
Well, you'd have to ask Melinda Powell, who's my colleague that teaches the courses, because that's probably confidential to the groups, what people are actually experiencing.
But you've done that as well, haven't you, Robert, with a group of people, agreed to sort of meet up in dream time?
In my first book, I have a chapter on mutual lucid dreams. Normally what happens is one person will become lucidly aware and interact with others, and then in the morning can tell them about their own dream experience. For example, my friend Ed Kellogg, one morning he called me up. He lives 2,000 miles away. And he said, "Robert, what did you dream last night?" And so I went and got my dream journal, started reading my dreams. He said, that one right there, where you sit at the table, did the man across from you, was he wearing? And then Ed described what the man was wearing. And I said, "Yeah, Ed, that's exactly what he was wearing." And then he said, so to your right, was that a woman and she was wearing blah, blah, blah and had a flower in her hair? And I said, yeah, that's exactly right. And then he goes, so what about the person to your left? And I said, well, I know it was a man, but I just can't really think. And Ed says, that's because I was lucidly aware sharing that dream experience with you. And it was truly phenomenal to hear him just kind of go through what occurred. But I do want to say, though, that this is very rare. I wouldn't make it the goal of my lucid dreaming to try to have a shared lucid dream or a mutual lucid dream. And instead, I think a person would be much better off getting in touch with their larger awareness, beginning to see that creativity, beginning to learn the principles of lucid dreaming and see how the unconscious mind works so that they can be more mindful of what they're telling the unconscious during the daytime in order to achieve the life that they want to have.
Yeah, that is quite spooky. That really does have Inception vibes about it, doesn't it? Where you're going off together and sharing the dream and meeting each other in that way. And I suppose, like all of this, there are ethical questions about it. You know, should we be doing this? Are we sort of intruding in someone's sort of very precious dream space?
Well, I recall one time I became lucidly aware, and this was during a period where Ed and I and Linda Magillon were doing mutual lucid dreaming experiments. And so I became lucidly aware. I decided I was going to go and find Ed. And it was really interesting. I started flying through this kind of blackness, and then I hit an impenetrable barrier. And I thought, boy, this is really weird. You know, this is my own lucid dream, but I could not get any further than this point. And so in the morning, I called up Ed and told Ed that I had sought him out in a lucid dream last night. And he said, what happened? And I said, well, that's the strange thing. I hit this impenetrable barrier. And he said, before sleep, I announced that tonight I was working on my own dream stuff. And so I didn't want anyone to bother me at all in my own dream experimenting. And it was interesting to see that his kind of barrier that he put up kept me from intruding into his experience.
Well, I suppose a barrier is a bit better than gunmen and everything else that happens in Inception when the projections start to attack.
How do you know you're not dreaming right now?
One thing that I bring up in my first book is the definition of the Sanskrit word Maya. Most of us think of Maya as illusion or fantasy, that when we exist in Maya, they mean we exist in illusion and fantasy. But when you go back and look at the scholars who are looking at Maya, what they find is that Maya actually means the process of creation, of transformation, of moving an idea into dimensional reality. And so I would say that right now we exist in a type of dream in as much as a dream is a mental creation. Our waking life is also a mental creation. I don't experience Dave and Laura as Dave and Laura truly are. I experiencing them as I filter them through my own beliefs, expectations, prejudice, and whatever. So again, we exist in a mental creation. We like to call it reality, but I hate to tell you what lucid dreaming has taught me. This is a perceived reality, an experienced reality, but beyond this exists a real reality. And this is not necessarily a real reality. It could be a consensus reality, but there's all sorts of varieties of reality. And so that's the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is it helps us question the nature of things. And without lucid dreaming, I think I would have just gone along with the program and just accepted all of this and all. But lucid dreaming really makes you question it. And I think that's why it has such a deep place in so many spiritual traditions.
I'm really glad I asked that question, Robert, because that's a brilliant answer. And again, this may or may not be for the recording, but just last night I was lecturing a group of trainee psychotherapists about Jungian ideas and approaches to working with imagery, and trying, probably not as eloquently, to explain exactly that same idea to them, that when we're in the dream state, we're holding, or we're with all the projections that we have, that in waking life, we're constantly projecting onto the consensus reality, but we don't realize it. We don't realize that we're experiencing projections. We think it is something external only.
In my second book with Caroline McCready, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, in the final chapter, I have a technique on how you can see whether or not you exist in a mental creation now. And it's too long to get into, but if you read to the end of that book, you'll see that you don't even have to be a lucid dreamer to give it a try, but you can see how you exist in a type of mental creation.
Okay, so it is time for our dream of the week. And Robert, I think you said you had a dream that you might be happy to share.
So this is a very short lucid dream that occurred on the morning of January 1st, 2022. I found myself walking through a room where there were other people, and suddenly I saw a woman wearing a very simple pink dress that looked kind of 1950-ish, and she seemed vaguely familiar. And then at that moment, I realized that this was my mother-in-law, Nona, who had passed away 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And at that, I became lucidly aware. And actually, I started to giggle because she had passed away 10 years ago, and this is the first time she'd ever appeared in a dream. And so I walked up to her and asked her if she had something to tell me. And she said, yes, this year, September will be the most important month. And I laughed with her and I said, well, if you believe September will be the most important month, I'm sure it will be the most important month. And she shook her head and said, no, September will be the most important month. And then I realized that she had seriously come to tell me that. And so with that, the lucid dream fell apart and I woke up and wrote it down in my dream journal.
And I suppose the obvious question is, was September the most important month? Was it a good premonition dream?
So I began to think, why would my deceased mother-in-law come to see me after all these years to tell me this? And then I thought, boy, I wonder if, since she's from the land of the deceased, if she's telling me that my mother is going to pass away. Oh. And so I told my wife what had happened. And I said, I think my mom might pass away in September.
Oh, God.
And my mom was in her 90s and was doing just fine up until July when she got COVID. And then she lost a lot of her energy. And then my wife and I both decided, based on the dream, to go back to my hometown the last weekend of August. And that next weekend, my mom passed away. So it was really quite phenomenal to have that experience and all. So it's interesting. I'm not saying necessarily that Nona is alive there in dream space and able to engage me. It might be that my unconscious was aware that this was a likely event and was just bringing it forward in the guise of my deceased mother-in-law. So I got the context of it. But it was quite fascinating.
I'm struck by the fact that it's also 9 months, a 9-month period, which is sort of that gestation period. I was wondering if that's where that was going to go at first.
Right. Well, we could say that my mom would be born into a new realm 9 months later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your mum dying like that, but also I was struck with an area that we always like to shy away from, but often the psychic nature of dreams, and that obviously lucidly you could engage probably more than most, but that sometimes dreams have very strong, clear messages in some way of material that we would have never have known.
Right. And one nice thing about lucid dreams is in these kind of visitation dreams where a deceased appears, you have the opportunity to interact with them such that you can determine, are they just a symbol of my grief or our loss or whatever, or do they actually seem to be a spiritual being in its own realm, aware and with knowledge that it can share that later I can confirm upon waking. And so it allows you the capacity to explore that more rationally, I'd say.
I just saw in a research journal talking about dreams from long ago in the past and comparing modern dreams, modern dream content with dreams from ancient China, actually, and saying that that's one of the main themes that has been there in 3,000 years of history is visitations from the dead, as well as encounters with the divine, and also all the kind of daily concerns that we'd be used to of the pressure of work and so on. But it seems like the same themes are there.
Right. It makes you wonder if dreaming is kind of at the foundational basis of spiritual searching and also the formation of religion. The dreams seem so much a prominent part of that whole area.
Yeah.
But visitation dreams will definitely make you question the nature of things, and if there's something more to life than this waking life that we're involved in.
Just before you go, is there anything you'd like to say about how people can contact you or find your work or find out about your courses?
Right. If you go to my website, luciddreaming.com, that's a place where you can kind of check up on what I'm into. Also, you can always check out our free online magazine at luciddreamingmagazine.com. There we get articles from lucid dreamers and reader-submitted lucid dreams. And also, I normally interview an experienced lucid dreamer, so you can begin to see the vastness of lucid dream exploration.
And I understand you've got a course coming up with the DRI itself, where you're online with us.
That's right. I know I'll be there, and along with Dave and others, and that should be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be Robert, Nigel Hamilton, and Melinda Powell. And if anyone wants to find out about that, it's at driccpe.org.uk/events. And you can also find out about it on Facebook and Instagram.
So, Robert, thank you. It's been really wonderful hearing you talk about lucid dreaming. As always, when I hear you speak and reading your books, I just think we're just scratching at the surface. And it is such a massive subject. It's like, it's almost overwhelming sometimes. But thank you for bringing some lucidity to the subject.
Thank you both. I've truly enjoyed it.
Okay, so if you want to find out more about Robert, then you can go to our show notes where there will be links to the varying websites and also more details on Robert's books, which are Lucid Dreaming, The Gateway to the Inner Self, and Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, Tips and Techniques for Insight, Creativity and Personal Growth, which he has also written with Caroline McCready.
That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening, and keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.
So, thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Don't forget to like us and leave comments on your favourite podcast platform. As I'm sure you know, that's the way we build an audience for the Dreamboat podcast and also to spread news about dreaming. And as we said, there are many ways you can share your dreams at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute.
Yes, we have courses, events, and workshops, and we want to hear from you. So check out the show note for links, or find us on Instagram as the Dreamboat Podcast, on our Facebook page as Dreamboat Podcast, on Twitter as @DreamboatPod, or come and find us at driccpe.org.uk. That's driccpe.org.uk. And you can email us on driinfo@ccpe.org.uk. Once again, that's driinfo@ccpe.org.uk. And if you want to explore your dreams further, or would like to support us, you can join the DRI as a member for just £10 a year. Yes, £10 a year. As a member, you will get discounts for our events and short courses. You'll get our newsletter with the latest dream research news, and we will also be adding other special member benefits during the year. Of course, members' dreams will always be given preference for reading on the podcast Dream of the Week slot. This low offer of £10 membership will last through to the end of June 2023. So go to the link on the show notes and become a DRI member today. Keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.